All right. Good morning, Doug. It's been a while since we've taken questions from our subscribers. If you want to ask questions, go to crisisinvesting.com, become a subscriber. You can contact us through our private app called File, or you can reach out to us on Substack directly and ask your question. So, Doug, first question is what do you see happening to the value of businesses that AI cannot replace in the coming years?
I think you can answer that better than I can. So what's AI all about? Uh, Lots of information gathered on absolutely everything under the sun and integrated. And how do you use this stuff? So what's the direct way for businesses and creating things? Well, that all ties in with robots. And uh, I'm a big fan of robots. Yes, we'll have Terminators, no question about it. But you'll have somebody that can do your dishes as well. So, value of businesses is that AI can't replace. What might they be? Well, what they're talking about, and this relates to universal basic income, as far as I'm concerned, it's that robots will do everything. And some people, the elite and the misguided, think that you're going to have to pay people to exist because they can't earn anything because robots and AI will do everything, mental and physical. Of course, that's a ridiculous concept because everybody turns out has an infinite desire for goods and services. So there'll be all kinds of things that AI and robots can't do effectively because everybody's got infinite desires. You can work 24/7. It's just a question of what wage rates you can get or why you do it. So anyway, to answer the question, yeah, it's going to change things a lot, but I'm not worried about it unless government manages to screw it up by paying everybody not to work. I mean, there are some idiots that think that the world's going to turn into a utopia where people will just sit around and think and write and create, and they won't have to invent. AI will do that. Or just be artists or turn into Eloy and everything will be great because we'll be paying them to be savants and artists. I don't think it'll turn out that way. They'll actually turn out to be dissipated druggies and mindless video consumers. Look, this is going to change the whole nature of the world, especially when nanotechnology starts joining the party in earnest. So, random thoughts. I don't know, Matt.
Yeah, I'll just say, the idea that there are businesses that AI can't replace is just a matter of time, I think, question rather than that there's a certain category of jobs that exist today that won't ultimately be affected by AI. I don't think there's like as we might think in the digital world, all the office jobs, white collar jobs, those are going to be hit first, clearly. But it's not that those blue collar jobs or where physical jobs will not ultimately be hit also, but it will take longer to build up. Maybe even if the technology is there, they actually have to build machines to get them to market that could do those things. And that will take time to build up that capacity. So, in the shorter term, I would imagine, let's say in the, 1 to 3 year mark, it's basically white collar jobs are in real trouble and the blue collar jobs are going to benefit. So there'll be like deflation in pay of wages in the white collar and inflation in the blue collar, I think. But um, but ultimately, it's just a matter of time. I think everything can be affected by it. Even, of course, Elon says lots of things that take a lot longer to develop, and some that may never develop. But he talks about his, Optimus robot being able to do surgery,
Yeah.
even. So, and you can imagine these things absolutely are possible, but whether or not it's in 10 years or 20 years, I don't know. But I think ultimately everything goes this way. And I think that people worry about it and the dooms people about the why you need universal basic income. It's that the thing is that you in the industrial revolution in the US, there were whole new ideas of industry that were created out of that. There was a wholesale loss of jobs of small scale farmers, but like out of that came things that people couldn't imagine, like urban planning and um, cinema, for instance, like totally unimaginable concepts. And I think that that's what will come out of this too. But you're right. If you pay people a survival level of income, then they go, well, by doing nothing, I get this. It's not really worth me trying to do something to innovate and try and figure out where I can create value around me, and come up with these new industries. So I think that's the biggest risk is that you start subsidizing people enough so as their subsistence level, but which steals their motivation to go out and figure things out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as usual, the intervention of the state, which is organized coercion run by the worst kind of people, inevitably poisons everything around us. So I'm not worried about advances in technology. They've always been eventually the friend of the common man, making life better and easier and more healthful and everything. It's just that when the state gets a hold of AI and robots until they're democratized, which is a word I kind of hate, but anyway, they'll use it to try to rule things and aggrandize themselves. So anyway, the technology is not the danger. It's who controls the technology, and the state always gets it first before it filters down to the average guy. So that's going to be the tough part.
Yeah, I think for individuals now, the important thing is you should try to embrace the AI, use the tools, figure out, like, try and use them to create something. Actually, get familiar with them because in the early phases of this, it can be a massive like force multiplier for you. Yeah, competing in the marketplace, it can actually really help you. And as you make the transition to more and more AI, it's those people who understand it and can leverage it have the most to gain, whereas those who are victims of it because they, chose to whistle by the graveyard essentially are going to get crushed. I mean, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, AI and robots are our friends. It's just that the bad guys are getting them first. And so for a while, they won't be so friendly.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, though, you can use them to do cool things. You
Yeah,
should try.
yeah.
Um, so next question is applying the skyscraper effect as a forecasting tool. Would it be reasonable to suppose that Cipriani's Punta del Este residency and resort is a precursor to a financial downturn in Punta del Este, and more broadly in Uruguay's residential towers/real estate market? Cipriani's project seems to qualify as a mega tall project for the area, comprised of three towers, one of them which is 60 floors and the other are 30 floors.
Well, we're both pretty close to Punta del Este, which is one of the, maybe it's the premier jet set um,
Gathering
situs.
spots, yeah, yeah.
Yes, in South America or maybe Latin America, quite frankly. So I guess it's going to succeed, and the market will come. And I'm not crazy about it actually, because it just means more crowds and this type of thing. But okay, so the skyscraper effect, I guess, was first noted in the late 1920s with the building of the Chrysler Building and skyscrapers in Chicago and the Empire State Building. And and that was kind of a sign that people were getting too big for their britches and the
Hmm.
market crashed and so forth. So it's happening again because for years, this has been true for at least a decade, maybe 15 years, people were remarking on 100-story buildings going up all over the world, in China and Dubai.
Yep.
Not so much in the US, though, not so much anymore in the US, because we're on the slippery slope. So is it
So
true?
is it a prelude to financial downturn?
Yeah, maybe people are, were, I'm not sure they are anymore, really optimistic in putting huge amounts of money in buildings that might take decades or a decade to occupy. And it's a sign of the top when people are willing to make giant investments because they think everything's going to be so hunky-dory. And maybe it will with changes in technology. But anyway,
For Punta
I
in
think
particular, though, how do you think it? Yeah.
I think it's going to succeed in Punta del Este because I think the world is going to come to this part of South America for lots of reasons, not just Uruguay, but Argentina too. Uh, and of course, this is not a question that anybody's asked, but I spent yesterday at a conference, about 100 people, investors, and basically Malay-friendly locals and internationals too. Uh, and they think that Malay is going to pull it off. I think it's a 50-50. But listen, even 50-50 chances of something unique in history, all of history, those are pretty good odds. So yeah, there's cause for optimism, at least down here. I don't know if I'm answering the question or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll just say about my thoughts on the skyscraper effect is I wonder how I get the idea. It could be a sign at the top, like a magazine cover kind of,
Yeah,
metaphor, right?
too bad they
But
don't have magazines and drugstores so much anymore.
yeah, because you can't really use them as a barometer. But I bet the magazine cover effect is more accurate than the skyscraper effect because you could have been in Dubai and said, "Look at these people putting up a skyscraper. This is the end," and it was the beginning, right?
Yeah. Of all the things in the world, a desert in the middle of nowhere. And well, it all gets back to the way a country is government is governed. I mean,
Mm.
if the sheikh in the UA, the sheikhs in the UA, if they were as stupid as most politicians, the place would still be a desert.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's, yeah, I'm just not sure. You have to look at that effect as one thing, as like maybe an idea of what might be going on, but then you got to look at the other factors. Like this area is uniquely seen as a place of refuge and leisure to the upper class in especially Brazil and Argentina. And it's like pretty in their bones at this point. It would take the pandemic didn't do enough to make them go away. This year is like going to be the biggest year ever. So there's all these other factors. Then you have Europeans moving to Uruguay and Americans moving to Uruguay. And
And
frankly, there's a
Canadians,
shortage of housing.
and I never thought Canadians would do it, but a lot of Canadians are moving down
They
here too.
there are, yeah, there definitely are. So there's a lot of factors you have to consider in that. I personally am very bullish on the area. So
Yeah,
let's see. Next question, Doug. What's the crisis investing sentiment, or let's say your sentiment to the following commodities: buy, sell, or hold? Gold, silver, uranium, and rare earths.
you got to be on the buy side of all of them. And as I've said in the past, it scares me when gold is at all-time highs, 4,000. Maybe it's run out of gas. Maybe it'll go drop 50%. But I don't think so because the public isn't buying gold still. There's no indications that that's the case from coin dealers. And this is apparently driven by central banks who want to get out of dollars wholesale. And silver, different story, not central banks, but in terms of how high silver is relative to past peaks, it's selling at about 20% in real terms of what it sold for in 1980. Yeah, so I'm bullish silver and rare earths, a substantial portion of the periodic table that nobody knew what to do with these things before, but just because of where they are on the table, they got unique properties that are most useful for high-tech applications, magnetics and electronics. So, yeah, got to be bullish there. And you got to be bullish on oil, even though as we speak now, oil's down to $57. But I've got to say, I was right about natural gas, which is up to about 470. So it's done really well. And I think we've been natural gas heavy in energy stocks. Uranium, gotta love it. All the commodities are cheap. That's the next place the market's going to go. And the market's going to go to the companies that mine it too. So I feel pretty good, even though things have already been pretty good. I'm looking to feel much better.
Hmm. Cool. Good. Let's see. Did I answer his question on there? I think so. Yeah. Okay. Next one is, well, this is, I guess it says, "Hi, Matt. Just watched you and Maxim with Glenn Beck. All three of you were fantastic in that interview. And seeing the way you ended the interview, explaining how somewhere in the 2+ years of the program so far, Max went from being a boy to being a man, really showed how fulfilled you already are by this experiment. Um, so it conjured a question for you mainly, but also for Doug. And he says, "I'm not sure it's actually even a fair question, but here goes. Without fully knowing yet how commercially successful this book will be, where would you rank this book in your list of accomplishments? And actually, will the book's ultimate degree of commercial success even matter at all in your ranking of it?" So I'll say that for me personally, because of my personal interest in the topic, and that like I would count it in the highest list of my accomplishments, simply because I think it really has had a profoundly positive impact on my son. And honestly, I could care less about the other things. So, but then also it's been quite fulfilling, all the other feedback we've gotten, which has been great. I mean, it's all been great and commercially successful. I don't even know what it means to be commercially successful, but so far the book's been, we've sold almost 14,000 copies of it so far, as a self-published thing. That's pretty good. Apparently, I was shocked to learn this, that the 58,000 books published each year by the mainstream publishers, among those, less than 1% of them sell more than 4,000 copies over their lifetime. So that's how bad the book business is. So by that standard, we're crushing it. I mean, we're in the top 1%, probably in the half of 1% by that standard already. So, but yeah, I think we got to sell at least 50,000 before I feel like it's a commercial success. I mean, and I don't really mean by the money, but I mean by getting it out there to enough people where it might be useful enough for enough people.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. And I'm pleased that it's out there and doing well because it's a good karma. I think we're selling something that needs to be sold and is needed by the market. So I feel good about the thing. Not to mention that I wanted to do it for a decade and it finally got done.
It's been at least 12 years, Doug. I know for sure, because I remember when you told me about it.
I know it's shocking. Time flies.
Okay. Next question is, with the Chinese stranglehold on rare earth refining and processing and the U.S. scramble for any producers anywhere, what's the real timeline on replacing non-Asian production, and how does that impact general mining stocks outside of that production sphere? Should we start looking at adjacent tech sectors that could be adopted to processing path?
Well, look, nobody really knows anything about rare earths but specialists. It's still early days for all this. And the Chinese were quite clever in finding viable deposits and doing the things that are needed to mine them. Because rare earths they're not so rare, they're everywhere. So you find the deposit, and then apparently it's just very dirty and chemical and nasty stuff, intensive to get them out of the ore. But the Chinese have done that. So anybody can do it. This isn't a secret that the Chinese have. It's just a question of, can we find the deposit? A lot of them out there in different Australia and Brazil and lots of places, the US, everywhere. And build the plant. I mean, it'll happen. So here's a bet you can make. This is a very safe bet. In 5 years, even after all the regulatory hassles, which are actually the biggest problem in mining, and the biggest problem. They'll cut through all that stuff because the margins are so high. And in 5 years, the Chinese won't have a monopoly anymore, and and it'll be a non-problem.
And as for we haven't studied the different players in the space beyond our initial review, which gave us MP materials, which we recommended to subscribers, and then that is more than doubled since we recommended it. As the U.S. government came in and made an investment in it, and Apple came in and invested in it. So, but beyond that, we haven't really looked at the different stocks in the space. It's just not something we focused on. Would it be worthwhile for me to spend some time on
Yeah,
that or not?
we really should do it. It's like hard work and figuring this stuff out. But yeah, I think those stocks are going to do well. And although it's idiotic for the US government and now the Canadian government to invest in mining companies, uh, it's actually economically disastrous and stupid. But I always look at the bright side, and the bright side is it's going to draw attention to this sector that nobody knows or cares about. Little crappy companies that have properties and technology and management and expertise, and the public is going to start once again pile into these things. So that's the good news.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll spend some time on it. I mean, we did come up with MP materials, which I'm quite proud of that we did that 1 month before. Is just with the initial talk around this, they seemed like they were the obvious ones, and we guessed right.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
find some others.
okay, next question. Let's see. Is there a date for the next Higher Ground novel? So, looking forward to the new adventures of Charles Knight. Higher Ground novels are your series of novels that you're writing, or you've already written three of them with John Hunt, and everyone is eagerly waiting the fourth edition. What's the
Well, yeah, I do recommend this series of novels because they're actually pretty damn good. Tracing the tracing our hero, Charles Knight, as he proceeds from one highly politically incorrect occupation to the next one, which is even more politically incorrect and besmirched and dangerous. So he's been a speculator, and he's been a drug lord, and he's been an assassin. And the next one, which is coming up, is terrorist, which is near and dear to my heart, I think. And John has done his work, and now it's up to me to do mine. So then he can proceed as an acknowledged terrorist, but a good guy. This is important. Remember,
freedom fighter?
yeah, a freedom fighter, exactly. As he goes back to Africa to become a warlord. So we can show that a warlord can be a good guy. Anyway, it's up to me. And since I'm basically going to try to take off a month or more in December and
December.
January, I'll get her done.
So we should count on getting it in the spring of next year.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, good. I can't wait. All right. Let's see. Doug, what do you think of monetary metals? It's been around for a decade with thousands of investors, but it's located in the US with a history of confiscating gold. And the basic concept, I think, is that you lend out your gold and you get paid interest in gold holdings. So, and I think it's basically they're lending out to people in the jewelry industry, I think. Is that right?
I don't know. I haven't followed them, frankly.
Hmm.
So I have no personal knowledge. But yeah, look, that's what a bank does, or historically, people like gold brokers used to do. That's how the banking business started. You lend out the gold, but you got to make sure that the loan comes back home after expenses. So I don't know. Are they a solid outfit that knows how to make good loans? Maybe they are. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but like for me, my gold is like it's the ultimate backstop. It's the one thing I wouldn't want any counterparty risk on
Yeah.
because it inherently doesn't. So for me personally, I wouldn't. I've heard of them, but I wouldn't even seriously look into it simply because of the way I view my gold that I have.
And I view it the same way. I mean, why take the risk for a couple 3% per year? You got the risk, and the gold's not in your possession, and maybe it never will be. So, yeah, it can work out great, but maybe not. So, count me out.
Yeah.
Or like who was it? Louis B. Mayer said, "Include me out."
Include me out. All right. Next one is, yeah, that's an interesting one. At what point can an economy be called a war economy? And if an economy switches to it, what scenarios are the most likely outcomes besides war? I mean, at what point or how often in history, Cold War and whatever else, did a spending of a lot of resources for war not lead to war? And if not, is it even possible to switch back to a soft landing when debt and a lot of resources are wasted for it? Or is the most likely alternative a system collapse?
Yeah, well, that's actually a very good question because humans just make war, and the more you prepare for war, your neighbors wonder what's going on here and how it's going to affect them. So maybe they should prepare too. And one thing leads to another, and it's never good. So war economy, bad thing. And like I think who was it? Sterner said about 120 years ago, he said, war is the health of the state. And since states all around the world have gotten much bigger in the last century, I expect that the wars are going to be much bigger too. But now they're not so much wars that, move large masses of men around just killing each other in armies, basically. But since World War II, it's all about destroying cities and atomic, biological, chemical, and now cybernetic and space weapons. Yeah, we can count on war, and it's not a cause for optimism.
No. But would I mean, is it the natural state of the state to be in a war economy in your mind?
Yes, it is, because the state produces nothing, and historically, the best way to get stuff you wanted was to steal it from other people.
Hmm.
I mean, it wasn't about production in pre-industrial times. It was about stealing stuff that took a long time to build, slaves and gold and cattle and artwork. So that stuff is easy to steal. So war was a quick way to get it.
Hmm.
Yeah. But now, on the other hand, war, it's all about production. And if you start a war, I mean, if you conquer, let's suppose you conquered, what's a high-tech country that just produces, well, Singapore. If you had a war and you destroyed Singapore, you're not going to have anything. I mean, there won't be anything to steal. That'll all be destroyed, and the technology will be destroyed, and and people that are doing it are going to try to get the hell out of Dodge. So war is not as productive as it used to be, but it's more inevitable because people in governments still think like those kind of people have always thought. I don't know. Um,
Hmm. Well, it does say he's a high-tech example, but maybe use Venezuela as an example. So,
yeah, why is Trump picking on them? It's not because they're in the drug business. They're actually notoriously not, certainly compared to their neighbor Colombia, who are our BFF, or used to be until a short while ago, and a lot of other countries in South America that are cranking out cocaine and that. So is it the oil? I mean, probably. I mean, Trump is, God, he's such a dim bulb. I mean, starting a war, and you can't predict what's going to happen in a war. He's hoping that he'll just kick in the rotten door of the Venezuela government, and everything will be fine. Then,
we'll be greeted as liberators.
yeah, well, they always like to think that, don't they? And then American corporations will go down there and make lots of money, and then the U.S. government, he'll be a hero. Well, maybe it'll work out that way, maybe, and maybe
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I think the motivation it's either some larger geopolitical thing that I don't quite understand that has to do with its sphere of influence in Latin America, even with in the Caribbean, with Cuba and Colombia and maybe Mexico too. Maybe it's something larger in there that I can't quite put together yet, or it's because he is a person we dis a leader who we disapprove of, who is sitting happens to be sitting on the largest known reserve of oil. That
Yeah,
you know,
but that's not a reason to kill fast-moving boats that are moving north in the Caribbean that present no threat. You have no idea who those people are or anything about them. You can't just use the U.S. military to. I mean, to me, it's incredible that nobody's in the streets protesting small-scale mass murder.
I think it's because the biggest thing is it's all about creating the uh, predicate or whatever for whatever actions they're going to take. And so setting up this drug war idea, which is completely false, around at least Maduro's involvement. And it's like he's like the kingpin and that, the Mexican cartels actually are somehow subordinate to him. I mean, it's just totally absurd, actually. But like Americans go, oh, it's a good story. Obviously,
Yeah,
drugs are, fentanyl's bad, fentanyl
yeah,
bad.
yeah,
So then but that person is connected to it sort of vaguely, maybe not really, but there's kind of something maybe there. So that it's good. We should go get that guy. And people just go, okay. Yeah. So I think it's just all about
yeah,
the pretext.
yeah, yeah. I mean, morality has been purged from or ethics, or any sense of right and wrong has been purged from the American political system. Totally. Domestically and internationally, it's quite disturbing, actually.
Well, I wish it just weren't the political system. I think it's among the populace, unfortunately, which is why we get it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well,
All right.
I don't spend enough time in the US anymore. I mean, I've limited my risk to 3 months a year. So,
All right. So let's see. Next question is Uruguay still a little backward, as you have once described in a video, and even not that long ago, you described it that way within the last couple of years for sure. So first of all, what do you mean by backward? And then is it still backward in your mind?
well, I first came to Uruguay, I think it was 1980, and I came across the river from Argentina. And at that time, uh, I described Argentina as being like going back to the 1950s, the prosperous 1950s in the case of Argentina, but it was still a step back in time. And then when I crossed across to Uruguay, I thought I was going back to the 1930s. It was like a black and white movie. The cars were all, even in 1980, they were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. Unbelievable. Uh, there were Bakelite dial-up telephones, rotary type, and not many of them. And the road between Montevideo and Punta del Este was a two-lane blacktop. That was it. And the place was just really backwards. Now it's transformed incredibly since then, but still kind of culturally still a back. Look, Uruguay is like Kansas on the ocean with a resort, Punta, attached to it. And it's changing pretty rapidly. But yeah, but listen, backward, which means mostly quiet now, I think it's pretty good. So,
Yeah, and I also think that your definition of backwards is really important. You really mean like backwards in time. And
yeah, yeah.
right? And so in some
Although,
ways,
although they were an early adopter of being a big backward, because along with Sweden, they were the first official socialist country in the world in what, 1902 or something. They made that their national mandate. And it's not a socialist state now, it's a welfare state. So that's
yeah.
backward.
Well, I mean, you had if I was reading a book someone gave me, and apparently Che Guevara came here at one point early in the revolution. And he's like, revolutionary action is not possible in Uruguay
Yeah.
because there wasn't enough grievance there or whatever to like even
Oh,
foment it. It's like it's already, we already got what we want.
yeah.
So it's not possible here. So
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the average guy, listen, it's hard to find an ambitious Uruguayan. I mean, it's strange. The water here is pretty good, but there must be something in the water. There's not a lot of ambition in this country or that country. I'm in Argentina right now.
yeah, yeah, and I think there's a lot of I have some a hypothesis about why that is. Why you don't see that, and I think a lot of it is similar to what you see with like tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand. Where because it's such a small population and people seem to be basically about one remove from each other. Everybody
Yeah,
kind of knows everybody. That like in that environment, if you do something really different, everyone, is gonna. It's like I could not have started my entrepreneurial career in my hometown, because everybody would have been like, who do you think you are?
yeah,
Why? Like, it wouldn't have worked. But I could in the U.S. You can go somewhere else, and it doesn't really matter. And and if you fail, no, you don't get the. It's not like you would be reminded of it every day for the rest of your life, which you would here, I think,
yeah.
if you started a business and failed. So I think that's a lot of it. But yeah, so it's backward in time in other ways. And I mean, when we decided to come down here during COVID, it was that backwardness in time was a hugely appealing factor, because who I looked at who wouldn't want to go back in time even just 20 years. I mean, was the quality of life generally better 20 years ago? I'd say it was, in most respects.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah,
still
that's
backwards.
right. And the nice thing about being a foreign transplant down here is that you're part of the society because you look like everybody else and so forth. But you're a foreigner, so you can do things that it's okay. Listen, it's a foreigner. I mean, they have these different attitudes.
Quirks.
Fine, but yeah, quirks. It's okay. But it's nice to be acknowledged for having quirks, and nobody really penalizes you for it.
Yeah, that's right. And
And there's going to be there's going to be lots more foreigners because I'm still convinced that that Europe is going to be exiting smart people in Europe, and this is one of the places they're going to wind up.
I agree with you. And I have to show you, Doug. You don't know this yet, but I got my citizenship and passport last
Oh,
week.
congratulations! That's great.
Thank you.
That, that's super.
So now Doug and I are both Uruguayan citizens.
Yeah,
Um,
and maybe if after they, since the residency requirements have been tightened in Argentina, still 2 years, but you got to physically be here for 2 years. You can't be gone half of the year, basically. So, but maybe Malay is going to change the rules somehow. So maybe just investing $500,000 in real estate will get you an Argentine passport. Might as well get one of those too. Why not?
yeah, exactly. Let's see. This is just a comment. It said, Matt and Doug, I just returned from your Uruguay Plan B conference. So this actually this question or comment comes from about a month ago. I've been around the world in the last 15 years looking for the perfect place I could call home. He said, this is it. I'm moving to Uruguay in February. He said, you and your team did an outstanding job hitting all the key points. Thank you.
That's
So
nice.
satisfied customer from our
Like
conference. It's
that
good to see.
kind. That's super. And welcome aboard. It's nice to have somebody else to, hang out with down here. Although I don't hang out with anybody.
Yeah, we do though. We do a monthly thing
Yeah, no,
typically.
you're much more social than I am. It's true.
It's only because of Jane. She organizes everything, makes it possible. So, last thing is when considering Plan B destinations, are there any in Europe that you think are noteworthy? And if so, why?
Yeah, I can't think of any actually. I mean, Europe's got a multi-thousand year history of fighting with each other, and that's not going to change that I can see. So, No, I can't. In fact, Portugal, this is so disappointing. Uh, Portugal has been a major beneficiary of, people looking for a plan B, and they were selling something they called a golden passport, $500,000, which basically guaranteed you citizenship after 5 years. Well, they just withdrew the program and rug pulled everybody that was in it, even if they were a couple of months from citizenship. So it's uh, it's too bad. These governments, I mean, no guarantees. They're all unpredictable. And
And I can't say I'm like intimately familiar with any European nation, although I've been to many, but I think I got a better understanding of like historical grievance when we were in Azerbaijan. And that exists in a lot of places around the fringes in Europe.
yeah,
And that's not a stable system, you know.
no, and even like, listen, and most of these European countries, they've been around as nation states as long as any nation states have been there. But you still got the Catalans and the Basques that really don't want to be part of Spain, which is understandable. And in Germany, people forget that Germany didn't exist. It was an ethnic area, but it didn't exist as a country before 1871. It was all principalities and duchies and baronets. Same with Italy in what, 18 Garibaldi, 1850 or something like that. It was the same thing in Italy. Same thing in most of these countries. And I think it's going to break up. Certainly the EU is going to fall apart. Hopefully NATO falls apart first before they start a war with Russia, which of course they're plumping to do. I mean, these criminals that are running the EU really want a war with Russia and are building their trying to rebuild their armies and reinstall um, conscription. And I mean, you've got crazy people running that, and they're all bankrupt. All these countries, they're all
Well,
bankrupt.
this is a perfect example of health of the state, being war. I mean, it's like they're pushing this direction to make the state more survive what it's going to experience economically.
And if you don't get a foreign war, uh, you might get a civil war with all the aliens that they're importing that really are just there to freeload and make trouble. And eventually the Europeans will get tired of that and there'll be violence. So no, I can't. I, I'm not crazy about Europe, frankly. In fact, and free speech is really on its deathbed. At least, well, certainly in Germany and England. I mean, it's pathological. Thousands, thousands of people are being prosecuted in
And
England
put in
and
jail, and put in jail.
exactly. This is, not as widely reported in this country as it should be.
Well,
Forget
I bet
about
the Europeans would prefer it to be less reported, and if they can do anything about it, they will do it. That's the
yeah.
crazy thing.
Sinking ship. Too bad. Western civilization was so nice while it lasted.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I've got for today, Doug. Thank you very much, and we will be back not next Wednesday, but next Friday with more.
Good. And we might have a, a guest to
Yes.
interview.
Yeah, hopefully we can secure that. So, all right. Well, thanks, Doug. Enjoy your weekend. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Matt. You too.